Soaring above the rooftops, Truro Cathedral is located in the centre of our thriving Cornish city. Opening back in 1910, Truro Cathedral provides an enriching visitor experience through worship, music, events, arts and learning. With free entry and their doors opened 365 days per year, the cathedral aims to create sacred space for all. Joining me today to tell me all about the amazing services they provide is Chief Operating Officer Sean O'Neill. Hello, Sean.
Afternoon, Ross.
Thank you firstly for joining me here on Chaos Radio today. I know you're a very busy man, so it's great to actually get you on.
It's nice to get out of the cathedral sometimes, and I really appreciated the invite to come and talk to you.
Brilliant. So can we kick things off today by you just sort of giving us a little introduction to who you are and what your job role is within Truro Cathedral?
Sure. So my name's Sean O'Neill. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Cathedral. What does that mean? You know, it varies day by day. But essentially what it means is I am responsible for the operation of the Cathedral. I don't typically have much involvement in the services, the religious services that take place in the cathedral, but everything else typically is my responsibility. So that is everything from, ensuring it's clean and tidy, it's open, it's well promoted, we have enough money to pay the bills, and making sure the building doesn't fall down.
I mean, quite an important role, I would say.
It is quite a responsible role within the cathedral, but it's a really enjoyable role too.
Brilliant. And am I right in thinking the cathedral, I'm sure I read online, it took like 30 years or something to actually build?
Yeah, it's fairly insane to think about in modern times, but yes, it was about 30 years to build it, because they had to raise the money to build it as they went as well.
And it's a popular place as well. I think a lot of people don't realise, some of the facts and figures here. I read that on average you have around 70,000 visitors a year.
Well, it's much more than that.
Is it?
Yeah, so the last footfall reports that we ran, which was not too long ago, showed that we had 310,000 visitors over a 12-month period. So that's not a whole year, but that was just looking at a rolling 12 months because we tend to look at it every month. But yeah, over 300,000.
Okay, I mean, no wonder you're so busy then.
Yeah, well, it keeps us busy, but it's great to see so many people coming and going, and that's a mix of regular visitors, so congregational visitors, but also people coming for all the different other elements of what the cathedral offers, so the events programme and some of the educational activities that we do.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some of the services you provide then, because I think this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to get you on the show today, was to actually talk about some of the upcoming events, because I think a lot of people don't often realise what goes on at the cathedral. It's not just your traditional place of worship anymore. So yeah, talk me through some of the events.
So, the cathedral offers, it's what I would call its regular programme of worship, which people would expect at the cathedral. So on an average day, there'll be 3 services that take place. There'll be 2 in the morning between 9 and 10, and then there'll be 1 in the afternoon or early evening. I don't have a great deal of involvement in those, but clearly they're important for what the cathedral does. But in recent years, and this does predate COVID, I don't want to present that this is a post-COVID thing, but before COVID, we started to broaden the cathedral's reach, I suppose, its engagement, and part of that was about the events programme that the cathedral holds.
Right.
Most of the events that we run are organised by others rather than the cathedral itself. So when I first joined the cathedral around 3.5 years ago, my role was a new one for the cathedral, and it was about growing the commercial life of the cathedral, because like many organisations, it's precarious in terms of its financial position. So I joined the cathedral with the remit of looking at catering, hospitality, retail, but crucially events. And events is something I really enjoy and get a lot of satisfaction out of being involved in events. Back then, the cathedral's events programme was largely choral music, choirs that would perform. And that absolutely has its audience. But there was a great opportunity for us to broaden the reach by offering new and different events. And over the past 3 years, through COVID and beyond, we've seen that diversification. And some of the most well-known, I suppose, are the Masquerade Ball that happens at New Year, which we've hosted for the last 2 years now. And it's fantastic to see the cathedral used in a different way. We've hosted some private events in there. So recently there was a Rolex customer event in there that was quite the spectacle to see. There are dining events, parties, all sorts of things that happen in the cathedral. So it's very varied, but it's also becoming in quite high demand for events that take place. And this year in 2023, we've got 5 Saturdays free. Everything other Saturday has got an event booked onto it, and other days of the week too. But the Saturday demand is just quite exceptional, really.
Wow. I mean, from a personal point of view, I myself have booked, I'm coming to an event. I'm coming to one of your silent disco.
Is that one in a couple of weeks' time?
It is indeed. Yeah. So I think it's just great how there is such variety now. You sort of do a lot of like creative and sort of artsy bits for children as well, which I think is really nice.
We do try to, and last week during half term we began what I would refer to as our activities programme. Right. So for some it's kind of what is the difference between an activity and an event. And an activity is a smaller scale, so it might involve 100 to 200 people. And last week we hosted a family theatre session which was called Katie's Black Hole Adventures. And it was great to see another new, different audience coming into the cathedral, a younger audience, because in general terms, our average visitor is an older or a more mature visitor. So it just offers something different to a new audience. And like I said, that was the first of the new activities programme, and then through half terms and summer holidays we'll continue doing that and focusing those on areas of the cathedral that people may not go to. So St Mary's Aisle, which is the most historic part of the cathedral, handily hosts 100 to 150 people, so we're showcasing those activities in there.
That's great. And there's and you do some sort of well-being bits as well, which is obviously here at Chaos, that's something we're always promoting, and there's a lot of, I saw some well-being events and like sort of meditation, yoga as well. It's great, and I think that's why we're here today, I think, to talk about some of those things and again raise a bit of awareness. People don't often think that it's there, so that's the great thing. No,
I think you're absolutely right, and it's a great thing for us to be doing as an organisation. There's a greater emphasis in society about mental health and well-being, and it's important that the cathedral plays a part in that. In a way, it does naturally. It's a big space, it's a quiet space, it can be a very reflective space, whether people are there for a religious reason or just to find some quiet time, some space to sit and think. Some of the services that are held in the cathedral don't have to be somebody of a religious or of a faith to participate. It can just be nice to say, okay, at the end of my working day, I'm just going to come and sit and listen and, contemplate or find some space in there. I mean, the cathedral is a building for everyone. And whilst, yes, it's sacred space, it is also common ground. So our mission is essentially of sacred space, common ground as one thing, not as two elements. So it is a space for everyone. The cathedral is for everyone. It's not ours. It belongs to everyone. So
it's a community thing, isn't it?
It is absolutely a community thing.
So going back to sort of the music side of things, I understand you run sort of chorister experience days as well. And I saw recently there's some exciting news as well about Truro Cathedral related to the King's coronation. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, there's a little bit of information that I can tell you about that. I mean, the chorister programme is really important to the cathedral. The choir is really important to the cathedral. I mean, it underpins much of the worship that happens at the cathedral. And they're very gifted musicians that come out of the cathedral as part of the chorister programme. But, recruitment to the chorister programme is important, and, it's about giving people from Cornwall and beyond experiences to develop in that really historic tradition. And, we do what we can to support that. But there's some great news that came out, I think it was at the weekend, that some of our choristers have been invited to participate with the coronation. So they will be actually singing during the King's coronation in May.
Wow. That's amazing.
I mean,
what an opportunity. It's for Truro as well.
It is, but also for those individuals, for those few individuals who've been selected to go up and do that. That's something they're going to remember for their whole life. And, that must give them an immense sense of pride. And of course, we're proud of them for being selected. It's not something they were auditioned for or requested. It was a request that came to us for them to participate, which was amazing.
I was going to say, how do you feel, or how do you deal when an email like that just pops up in your inbox?
Well, it was a little bit surprising for sure, but it's a great result. But essentially what it does, you have the initial, it's fantastic, that's exciting, but then it's into the immediate logistics of, okay, what do we need to do? What can we say? When can we say it? And, working with the palace about what can you say? Like you said, what can you tell us about it? But everything we say about it has to be something that we're allowed to. But there's the slightly boring logistics of rehearsing the music, what needs to be performed, how do we get them there, how do we accommodate them, how do we feed them. So there's a lot that goes into it. But we have a great relationship with Truro School, which is where the choristers are educated. And the school are really supportive in terms of that arrangement too, and the logistics. So we're not by any means in it on our own. We've got some great support there.
Fantastic. And I suppose it's going to be hard almost narrowing it down to who gets that role as well.
Already been selected.
Have they? See, that's kind of semi-disappointing. I was hoping for like an X Factor boot camp style knockout round.
Maybe. So we didn't get the choice of who to select, which in a way makes it easier for us, I imagine. So, but yeah, what a great opportunity for those choristers.
Brilliant stuff. Let's talk a little bit more now about sort of the community. I want to talk about the Wall of Kindness. This is something I heard about, and hopefully you can you first of all explain to our listeners today what it is and what it does within the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant initiative, really, and it's one that we're delighted to play host to. And essentially, within the cathedral car park, which may sound like not the most salubrious of locations, but it's got to be accessible and it's got to be protected from the weather. So in our car park, there is an area that is designated as the Wall of Kindness. And, if you went to school in the 80s or 90s, you'll remember, the pegs that you would hang your coat on.
Yeah.
Essentially, there is an area that is hung with pegs, and people bring coats, blankets, all sorts of things that they're willing to donate to those in need. So when I arrived this morning, parked in the car park, there'll be 20, 30 things that are hung on the Wall of Kindness. And over the course of the day, the week, people will take something if they need it. So simply lift it off and take it away. That's all there is to it. People donate to it and people take items away. But it's been great to see how it's developed. From an initial idea was about coats, and it wasn't our idea. I'm not going to take credit for the idea. It was about a coat over winter, keeping people warm, people who are perhaps sleeping on the street. But it's extended beyond that to people who may not be able to afford a coat. And we're not just talking about adults here. There are people who donate kids' clothes and kids' coats and shoes at that point. And people just pick them up and take them away. And it's also developed into people leaving things like pot noodles and such at the base of it, which it's phenomenal to see how it's been adopted. And we're delighted to host it. It was initially only a temporary measure, but there's no intention to take it away. And in terms of not taking the credit for it, because I don't wish to, we accepted the offer of hosting it, and it was organised by the sustainability team at Trelisk. So it was their initiative, and because we've done some work with them before, they asked, and we were delighted to accept. And it's fantastic to see the reception it's got, and it feels like absolutely the thing that a cathedral should be doing. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's such a almost simple but effective idea that, yeah, I'm so glad to see that it's sort of taken off. And actually, it's sad that we live in a world that we need this kind of thing, but we absolutely can't shy away from it. I know Chaos here themselves, are very much involved heavily in helping the local community as well. So we all know what the cost of living crisis is doing out there at the moment. So it's just nice to see lots of different people getting involved in it, really.
It is, and that original concept of using it for something as simple as a coat was, from Trelisk, we will provide, lost property coats. We will populate this thing. They really don't need to, because the level of donation actually seems to outstrip the need. We have a room that is piled with bags of clothing and coats that people are donating, and we don't want to just leave it on the floor. So every morning our team add to the wall of kindness from the things that have been donated. So people's generosity too, for those that do have, giving to those that perhaps do not or can't access, it's brilliant to see.
Brilliant. And how important is, this might sound like an obvious question, but I think it's an important one to ask. How important is sort of that inclusion and accessibility at Truro Cathedral? Because I understand you're sort of open to all faiths, abilities, age, gender.
I would say we try our best ultimately, and we don't always get it right, but it is a place that is for anyone and for everyone who wishes to come in. So everyone is welcome. There is no faith requirement to walk through the door. We try and make it as accessible as possible. We're trying to do some improvements to that this year. We're currently seeking some funding support, as many organisations are, many not-for-profits are, to improve what we would call our accessible entrance. But it's not quite good enough, so we want to make it better. But there's still plenty of work for us to do in terms of how we train our team to better support those who have different needs. There's a need to look at how we present our interpretation, our signage, so that it is more inclusive. So it feels like a never-ending journey. But I'm not sure it should be a journey with an end, because people's needs change and evolve over time. So it's something that we do focus on. We work within the constraints of a grade 1 listed building that is not the most flexible. And when it was built in or finished in 1910, it was not built with accessibility in mind.
Yeah.
And, there are restrictions on what we can and can't do, but we will always try and do more to make it more inclusive and more accessible. And, we continue to develop our team, again, wherever we can, to give the best possible support. And our volunteer steward team are phenomenal in terms of that sense of welcome and inclusion that our visitors get.
Brilliant. And again, that the offer is there. I do some accessibility work myself. If there's anything that I can do to help you,
That's very kind.
I'm definitely down for that. It's great that you have these older buildings, and a lot of companies, businesses, charities, there's always excuses often as for why things aren't maybe done, but there are ways around everything. And it's great that the cathedral do have, like, I've used your accessible ramp before in the past, and yeah, it's great that those options are there. But there's also times maybe if the door isn't manned, or if it's locked, and then you're still sort of stuck outside. So there's ways around things that it's a working partnership, isn't it? And the fact that you're open and willing to make changes, that's I can only see as a positive thing.
Yeah, I really hope so. And as somebody who's used the accessible ramp previously, you'll have encountered the big heavy wooden door that's at the top of that ramp, and that's not ideal. And if somebody's with you, fantastic. If the door's open, as it is most of the times, great, but it's still a heavy door. It's not something that's easy for, say, a wheelchair user or somebody with another disability to actually open. So that the current project is around that accessible entrance and putting side opening automatic doors on there, which would make a great improvement. But nothing's ever simple with a cathedral. It's achievable. It just takes time and focus on it as well. So keen to keep doing the good work. We came so close to having a changing places toilet facility in there. We were applying for some funding to convert an area of the cathedral last year so that it could host a changing places facility, which I know is a hugely valuable thing. Having worked in a venue that's had one previously, I know the real benefit that offers. But unfortunately it wasn't successful. But it still remains something that we want to do in the future. So hopefully there will come a time where we can actually fulfill that.
I hope so, yeah. I know Changing Places in particular, they've just announced a whole load of new funding, so fingers crossed for the future for there. What about, you touched briefly on volunteers there. Is that something you're open to? Do you actively encourage people to get involved to volunteer, or are there sort of outstanding any paid opportunities, job roles available for people at the moment?
So volunteering is really important for the cathedral. We have currently around 160 volunteers, which sounds quite a lot, but it dropped a lot during COVID. So it is down to 160. It was over 200 prior to COVID. And we have a lot of work to do in terms of developing our volunteering team and refining the opportunities, because nothing's ever static, and nor should it be. We're always changing, the organisation's changing, the offers changing, the needs change. So we're currently shaping those volunteering opportunities. Of course, there are opportunities now for volunteering in all sorts of different fields, be it working with the Flower Guild, the Sewing Guild, stewarding, event stewarding, CCTV operators, and by that I don't mean outside looking CCTV, it's our camera system for events. There are loads of opportunities, but there's more we can do to be more flexible with it, because not everybody nowadays can say, I will give up a day a week to come and be a steward for you. It may be that, I can give up a whole week of time here, but that's it. Or it may be I can give 2 hours every so often. So there are certain projects that suit what I would call like a micro volunteering project. So there's lots more for us to do there. The team, we're struggling in some respects with a couple of things. So recruitment is hard as an employer. Finding the right people for your team, or just simply finding people who want to work for your team, is quite challenging right now. For whatever reason that is, I think there are more roles available than there are people looking to fill them. So that's quite challenging. But, you've mentioned the cost of living crisis earlier. That's biting so many people, but it's also affecting businesses, because, not as many people can afford to go out for a meal or a coffee. So you look at the centre of Truro now and you see businesses that we've known for quite a number of years closing their doors and shutting down. And in the cathedral, for our commercial elements, our shop, our restaurant, they are undergoing changes right now, which is quite challenging and difficult, because you want to support your team through it.
Of course.
But actually there's not necessarily the commercial demand for it. So, we do still recruit. We're currently going through a change of director of music at the moment, which is obviously quite a specialist role. But we're interviewing for that next week, and we had a really good suite of applicants. Obviously, you've mentioned about the chorister programme and how high profile that has been. But we are currently recruiting to a director of music post after our director of music leaves after, I think it's 20 or 21 years with us.
Wow.
And he is going on to St John's, Cambridge, to be their director of music. So it's a fantastic opportunity, once in a lifetime for him. So I know it was a difficult decision for him to leave behind the cathedral that he's been at for so long and loves, and has had so much impact in his time.
Yeah. Touching on, trust me to go straight to the food comments, but touching on your restaurant there, Truro Cathedral do an amazing English breakfast. I will just say, I've had a fry up there before, and it's very nice. I will just say that. Talking about money and things like that, obviously it's so important to sort of funding, donations, things like that. And I'm sure a lot of your maintenance and restoration works don't come cheap. So how important is it for you to secure, and how does it work, securing donations and funding?
Yeah, so money. It's the one thing most people don't want to talk about in money. It is essential. It's kind of a fundamental part of my role, is looking after that element of the cathedral, not in its entirety, but ensuring that the cathedral can be sustainable and survive. So as an organisation, it's not funded. So we don't get a large packet of money every year from the central church. That's not how it works. They do support some roles. So the clergy who are in the cathedral, they do support. But essentially, it's just the same as any other not-for-profit organisation. You've got to raise the funds you need to keep the doors open, the rain out, and keep it in a good state of repair. So that is challenging. We rely on a lot of donations, particularly from visitors, but also from congregation. So that support's really valuable. But increasingly, commercial revenue is very important too. So I've touched on catering and retail. The events programme has been a massive area of growth for us over time, especially in recent years, where when you look back to pre-COVID, our events revenue was what it was, but it's now tripled. So it's been a real success for us. I'm not saying that's made life easy, because as a cathedral, Grade 1 listed building, it does not come cheap to run it. And so, yes, it costs a significant sum every year, and it's hard to balance the books. And at the moment we don't. And, we've got to find a way to do that, and are constantly looking at ways to maximise what we do and, still offer the service and services that we do. But it is hard. But Grade 1 listed building, we don't have a bank account full of loads of investments where we can just simply say, we'll have a new roof next week. So we have to fundraise. And St Mary's Isle, the most historic area that I touched on earlier, we've been fundraising for St Mary's Isle for about 18 months now, mostly with trusts and foundations, because it needs a new roof. The roof leaks terribly. Sometimes you wonder if there's actually a roof there. But to re-roof that area, and it's relatively small compared to the cathedral, is £500,000. And you can't expect your congregation or the local community to contribute all of that cost. There's some, and that's really valued, but most of that comes from trusts and foundations. So you've got to be looking out for the funding, the opportunities. You've got to apply if you're eligible. A cathedral is not a standard charity, and it's a religious institution, so you're not necessarily eligible to the same range of funders as most other not-for-profits. So it can make it harder. But the good news is, with St Mary's Isle, we've raised almost all the money to be able to proceed with that.
Amazing.
But it is never ending.
There's always something.
The cathedral, at the last time I checked, need £12 million spending on it to actually bring it up to, this is how it should be. But you're always balancing, what needs doing absolutely now versus what do we know is coming, and always being mindful of the funding situation to see, okay, we need the next section of the roof, which would be £4 million. Where do you go for that?
Madness.
But you can't get brought down by these costs, because if is there a hole in the roof? There are loads of holes in the eastern roof of the cathedral. But does it actually present a problem? It will in time, but not right now. If it was your own home, you'd be really worried. But you have to be really objective about it, and you've got to continue doing the good things that you do, rather than getting lost in hopelessness about finding £12 million.
God. Money, hey, makes the world go round, but hey, who wants it? Final question, Sean, and this is quite an open one, but what do you see in the future? Where do you see things for Truro Cathedral? So the thing for me that really makes me tick in my role is about working with the community. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sat here talking to you. It's always been a really important thing to me. And I still think the cathedral has got some way to go in terms of truly embedding itself with the community, because we've only recently started to do different things, and that's been really well received. But
there's so much more that we can do to show people this amazing building asset that they've got, that they have a stake in, whether they're visiting Cornwall or live here. And it's just engaging people with that space and potentially overcoming barriers to entry, because for some people, just that perception of walking up to a cathedral and thinking, oh my goodness, this is a massive building, so it's quite intimidating. There are 2 big doors there. I don't know what's on the other side. Sometimes you've got to give people a reason to step over that threshold, and the events program is an example of that, because you're going to the NHS Silent Disco in a couple of weeks. Fantastic. People see I'm going for this purpose, so the NHS event. They don't necessarily think I'm going to the cathedral, whereas on an average day they may not choose to go in. But once you've gone in that first time, you think, actually, now I know what I'm walking into. It's not actually that big or scary. And my, in some cases, preconceived ideas weren't right. So I can now recommend and become an advocate and talk about what an amazing experience I had and how good it was, and encourage people to go back. But it's lots of things. The cathedral, it's a place of worship, it's a heritage building, it's a visitor attraction, it's an educational space, it's a meditative space. It's lots and lots of different things. But what I would like it to achieve, perhaps in the next 10 years, is to be truly embedded within the community and be representative of the needs of the community. Wall of Kindness being one example. There's far more that we can do once we overcome the challenges of just surviving in a increasingly difficult commercial world. So that community engagement for me is key. Sure, I'd love to see 101 different events in there, but I've got to be mindful of the space that it is sacred space and common ground. It can't just be a big event space all the time. It's got to balance those 2 things and support those 2 things, and it can't do that if it gets turned into an entirely events venue, as much as I may love it.
Well, you guys are already doing amazing things there, and I really do hope we do see that community involvement as well, and see it continue to succeed, because it's brilliant. It really is. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. Last chance to sort of plug where anyone can find out more information about the cathedral, follow you guys. How can people get in contact?
So our website is a great source of everything that's going on. We have a really extensive what's on page. So that is really the go-to. For social media, at Truro Cathedral, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are good places to go, but I would always recommend the website. Most of the time Facebook points back to it anyway. But our Instagram account is actually quite interesting. It's newly launched, and really it has a very different feel to the cathedral. It's much less formal, I would say. It's a great thing. And what I would say is on May the 4th, we're doing something very special on social media.
Interesting. Man of mystery. I like it. Sean, thank you so much again for joining me today. And yes, if everyone wants any more information about Truro Cathedral, you can check out their website, as Sean said. That's just www.trurocathedral.org.uk.